of Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. I am your humble narrator, Danny Foxworth, and on this episode, it's a very special guest. I had her on for the Childhood Stories episode, and now I'm bringing her back because we're going to go down memory lane with some of our members, some of the cornerstones of our family. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have the one and only, my sister, Myra Foxworth, in the building tonight. Sissy, how you doing? Doing great, doing great. Glad to have you back on.
Good, man. How you?
And so, we're going to talk about, well, really, this episode is going to be
I'm
an
glad to be
ode
back
to our
on.
grandparents because, I mean, I have both my parents on multiple times. I've had my sister on, and now I want to, spotlight the cornerstones of the family, if you will. So, this my grandparents on my dad's side are affectionately known as Mama and Papa, and the grandparents on my mom's side are affectionately known as Granny and Granddaddy. So, the first person we're going to shed light on is my grandfather on my dad's side, Edward Foxworth, also known as Papa. So, Melissa, what were some of your memories of Papa?
So, one that stands out is, he loved Gunsmoke. Loved it. And the degree to which he loved Gunsmoke, I love Tom and Jerry. And they came on at the same time. So I made a deal with this man that we would switch off days of who could watch it on the color television. And he agreed, yes. And Dad was like, woo! He said, boy, Daddy loved you. I said, yeah,
That's funny because I had a similar situation with Mama that I'll get into.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites
when we
right
get
there.
to her. With Papa, he was the person that really kickstarted my wanderlust.
Okay.
Because, when I was a kid, especially in the summertime, I was always riding shotgun with him, and it was nothing for him to just say, "Hey, Danny, let's go to town." With town meaning Monk's Corner, and so. We would hop in that black Chevy C10 pickup, and we would, and that was, boy, in the summertime it was the pits because there was no AC in that truck. And what he would do is he would roll the windows up, but then there was a smaller window, like there was a smaller window at the edge of the front doors, and you would unlatch it, and then they would slide open for ventilation. I'm thinking that's going to help me, and it didn't help me. We got the Piggly Wiggly, and I was just drenched in sweat when I got out of the truck. That was the pits, but still, I enjoyed, having that quality time with him and just going from places that I had never been. I remember we would go to Piggly Wiggly, and he would get his Carolina Pride bologna. And he would let me get some candy, so I would get the circus peanuts. Then after we would leave Piggly Wiggly, we would go right across the track over to Delta Pharmacy, and then he would go pick up his prescription. And every now and then he would let me, because I don't know, do you remember when they had the soda fountain? And we went to the soda fountain, and every now and then he would let me get a Coke.
Yes.
Float. I was like, man, that's all right there. But and then also, whenever we would go outside of Monk's Corner, we would take the main thoroughfare of Monk's Corner is Highway 52, and we would take Highway 52, and sometimes we would one time we drove all the way down Highway 52 up to Florence, South Carolina, because it was one of Miss Carolyn's kids. I want to say it was Vanessa. It was either Vanessa or Alicia that was attending Francis Marion at the time. And I remember we would have to go up there to pick her up so she could be home for the weekend. And I thought that was the coolest thing. That's what really opened my mind up to saying, like, wow, the world is bigger than Monk's Corner. Like, what else is out there? So, yeah, that was one of my biggest memories of rolling around the streets with Papa.
Yeah.
So any more memories that you have?
With Papa, he kept things close to his chest as far as being like emotionally expressive. And it's not something I thought about that much until really after he passed. Like, because I knew he loved me, but he was not that person that was going to hug you unless it was like maybe Christmas. and then it would be kind of awkward. You get that little pat, and then he's like, "All right,
Yes, he
hey,
did.
all right." That was what he always said to babies. Man, hated that. Why you saying that to the babies? Hey, all right. Why you always doing that?
Talk about it.
Him introducing me to the wonder of fried eggs and rice. Oh man, he just had this one little pan that he would make it in. Whoo! Oh my gosh, you talking about a delicacy? It was, and it was really just, I don't know, salt and pepper, the egg, and it was perfect every time, just every single time.
Really?
And he also introduced me to my love for coffee. His coffee, he had his formula down pat.
Yep.
And he used to drink it in you probably still have them little green teacups at your house. But he would make his coffee, and I always asked for some. So he would say, okay. And I would sit on the steps by his chair while he drank his coffee. And when it was about 3 teaspoons left in the bottom of it, he would hand me the cup, and I could just sit on the steps and drink the coffee. And you couldn't tell me nothing. You talk about pure joy.
I was going to say, how did he prepare his coffee?
And every now and again, when I make my coffee now, go ahead. Honestly, I don't remember watching him do it. I just remember drinking it and how good it was. Like he had, I know it was sugar, creamer, and the coffee. So, and as an adult, every now and again, I get it just right, and it tastes like his coffee, and I feel like a real success. I feel like I've arrived.
Okay.
Scramble, always scrambled. So that you want to start with your rice cold, because it's almost like the basis of how you would do a fried rice, except the ratio of egg to rice is way more eggs than what you would put in a fried rice. But you take that cold rice, and then the eggs, you just salt and pepper. Okay. Little Lowry's maybe, and scramble that thing on up.
In the summertime, he would always prepare
that was
when
good.
he would go
that was
back
a snack
from Piggly Wiggly, and he would prepare his fried bologna. And it was always interesting to me how he prepared it, because he would cut it, and like he would cut corners of the bologna, and it almost looked like the Iron Cross. It almost was, the shape of it resembled the Iron Cross, like it used to be on the Red Baron plane.
Huh.
And I think he did that to reduce the rise in the center of the bologna whenever he fried it. I was like, man, look at that. That's some engineering bologna. That's all right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And oh gosh, and Papa. Okay, so 2 major things about him also. Something about, like, where we grew up, everybody has some sort of a trade for the most part. Like everybody, our father's generation or and older, there's some sort of a trade. So you could really ask, what were people's trades? And Papa's was carpentry. Like that was his thing. He loved to build things. Like and he would just take a notion and do it. Now, he was not a man for aesthetics. Okay, so it was gonna be functional, but it was not gonna be cute. And but it was gonna last the rest of your life. But it was not. Not really. He wasn't about them looks. He was about, let's get that functional, get that good and sturdy. Was his thing. And so I know there's a couple of tables at your house, and at the record stand, he built those. I remember when he built that record stand, like I was completely fascinated. He just, the idea that you could take a notion, you know what, I need a piece of furniture, and then just sit around and make it. That's just awesome to me. And one of the other things about him,
that he made the record player stand.
No, you go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yep. And and there's a side table. There's 2 layers.
Wow. Okay.
It's kind of longish.
And
at your house, that he made that too.
But speaking of being a handyman, it always fascinated me that he was able to be a handyman, considering how bad his arthritis was. Because I just remember being astonished at how gnarled his fingers looked due to his arthritis. And the fact that he was still able to maneuver and like use a hammer and use a chainsaw and stuff like that. I was like, man, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, go ahead. Yeah. And
And I'm talking about really
yeah,
get
I
to it.
remember he let me use his push more because I
No,
saw
I,
Dad
I
cut
was just
grass
gonna
one
say
time.
really get
And
to
of
it.
course,
You go
I
ahead.
wanted to emulate my dad, so I was like, Papa, can I get your little push mower out of the lawn house? He was like, sure. And we fired it up, but unbeknownst to me, the off switch on it was broken. So what he did was, as an alternative to shutting it off, he handed me a flathead screwdriver, and he was like, man, said, here's the screwdriver. What you gonna do to shut it off? You're just gonna take that and just touch remove the spark plug wire. Now it's gonna shock you just a little bit, but that's how you turn it off. My gosh, Melissa, when I went to go dislodge the spark plug wire, it felt like a mule kick on the inside. That thing hurt. And he sat there and he just laughed at me. He said, "You got that little shock, didn't you?" I told you it was coming. I was like, "Wow, okay, there it is."
You know what? That in a nutshell is who.
Yes,
That's the
indeed.
quintessence of Edward Foxworth right there. Like that right there is classic him. One of the other major memories I have of him was what an avid gardener he was. Like, which is common where we come from. That's like everybody has a big garden. Like, and people would call it. It's what folks call a kitchen garden these days. But it was not no small kitchen garden because it would be. I just
Yep.
remember like summertime. I knew in July the okra was gonna be getting up. He always planted peanuts. And so there would be peanuts drying on the back patio or whatever, and then we would roast those. And
Yes,
oh my gosh,
indeed.
the boiled peanuts was it. Whoo, you talk about a summer delicacy. Like just them peanuts was gonna be ready. He is the person that let me taste what a raw sweet pea tastes like for the first time. Changed my whole life. I was like, what? And when I was really, really little, I remember being in the garden with him, and when I was the person who had to plant the seeds, because I was
Really?
told, they said it's good luck for children and pregnant women to plant the seeds.
Didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember
Really?
also, I got my love of wrestling from
Yep.
Papa,
Fun
and
facts.
there would. And do you remember the National Guard Armory in Monk's Corner?
Yeah.
They used to have wrestling matches in there on Saturday nights, and like 1 or 2 Saturdays out of the month,
Uh-huh.
me and him would go watch wrestling matches at the Armory. Yeah, and it was so
What?
gosh, I might have been.
I
This
did
was
not
like
know that.
7.
How old
This
were
was like
you?
from age 7 up until like age 9, I want to say, and it was always funny.
Man,
and it was always funny
I
to me
like wrestling
how
too.
Dad
It
used
just
to
left
say
me.
how
That's all right.
he would rush home to watch his wrestling, and then he would sit there watching it on TV, and how mad he would get when the outcome of the match didn't go in the way he wanted it to, and seeing that in real time, watching it live and in person with him. That was super fascinating. I'm like, wow. So
Yeah.
Dad was right about how Papa reacts to whenever the bad guy wins the match. I was like, man, this is cool. I never saw him in that light before.
Yeah.
Normally
Just
whenever
upset.
Madman riles him up, he'll just say shut up, and he'll cut his hearing aids off, and then that's the end of that. But do you remember? Because I think I had just been born when Papa had his heart attack.
Oh my goodness.
So do you remember what that was like for you?
Dude. It was completely terrifying because I remember how I got over to my man Papa's house. But I remember he was walking around in a circle in the living room because he wouldn't sit down. Man was heated. And she was like, sit down, Elva, golly. Da, 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 da. She's going off. They've turned on the air conditioner in there, to try to like, I guess, get him cooled down and stuff. And then I remember them, mom and dad leaving with him in that Monte Carlo. And yeah, that was I was sitting on those same steps, and I was worried because
Yeah.
every adult person around me had like they were not available. They was truly not available. Yeah, yeah. So, gosh, so I had to be
Yeah.
three then, like early three.
Man, so
If
how
you were just
whenever
born,
he got out of the
yeah.
hospital, did you feel a
hmm
sense of relief?
It was really more like, oh, okay, everything is normal now. So I don't
I
think
got
I
you.
registered it as a sense of relief because I wasn't old enough to really process it so much that way. Um, but it was just oh, this is normal. Oh,
Man,
okay,
and his
he's home.
his his last days
Yeah,
on Earth. Do you remember what that feeling was like? Because you were away at college, weren't you?
I was. It was that again was terrifying because we are a very kind of walk it off, stiff upper lip sort of a family, and I expected when I said to Dad, "How's Papa?" I expected him to be like, oh, "He's all, he doing all right." That's what I expected to
Yeah.
hear. And when Dad said he's not good, I knew it was bad, bad. Like, and it was my junior year, and I was a TA, and I remember I drove home from FAMU twice, like, because I flew home one time for something else, and that's when I kind of fully saw how he was going downhill, and so then I remember coming home, and I was grading papers for work while I sat in the hospital room with him, and
Yeah.
it was watching those machines breathe for him was very hard to watch. Like it was just real because it was so harsh. It was just so harsh, and he was a man. His stature was small. Pepe was like 5'6". He might have weighed 125 pounds, maybe. He was super strong, but he was a little dude, and so it just looked. I just had never, and that was my first like personal experience with somebody I love passing also, and having the experience of because our houses were so close together, I would be at home and I would just be like, let me go see what Pepe's doing, and would just go over there. And it was the first time I had the experience of
So I
being about to
imagine that
go
had to
do that
feel
and
fun.
realizing he's not there. Yeah, that yeah, that was a real rough time, and it was a rough semester to go back to school and have to like
I do.
navigate that. And you were the person that told me he
I do.
passed. Do you remember that? And
It was the
yeah,
same. I had
what was
basically
it
had the
like for you
same
as he was passing?
reaction
Like,
as you
what do
whenever
you
I
remember
saw
about
him in
that
the
time?
ICU and seeing all those tubes attached to him. And they would, and I think it was Dad that told me he was having a bunch of fluid build up in his lungs that just wouldn't go away. And I'm just like, oh my God, this ain't good at all. And then when Dad told me that he passed, just boohoo cried in my room because like you, that was the first family member that I was really close to that departed life, and it was just I wasn't ready to handle that situation at that time. Like the fact that like man he's not coming back. Like I can't go over and talk to him just like you said, and that was a rough time period because I think I had just started college, and yeah, that took a toll on me. Honestly, that was the biggest reason. That first
Yeah,
semester
yeah, you
I
did.
was on academic probation, and that had a lot to do with it. But I'm extremely thankful for the memories and the learned
Yeah,
experiences and life experiences of one Edward Foxworth, and he'll never be missed, and his spirit.
man,
Yes, he is. So now
absolutely
we're gonna
forever. He's the original Sweet Fox.
yep.
You had
And
to
so
say it like this.
now
You have to
we're
say
gonna
Sweet
dedicate this
Fox.
portion of the program to his wife, Mama, She went by the name of Altean Foxworth. So, what were some of your favorite memories of Mama?
Lady right there, that was my homie. Like, for real, my homie. Like, once I got my car, when I was
Really?
home from school, sometimes I'd be like, man, let's go to the mall. We go to the mall and
Wow.
hang out.
I did not know that.
Yeah. Yeah, we would go to the mall. Yeah. Yeah. She had one color lipstick and one
Mm-hmm.
color nail polish that she didn't wear that much, but when she did, it was gonna be a scarlet red. She was not afraid to tell anybody exactly what she thought. I know that lady inner body was just peaceful because she didn't hold nothing inside that could go on and come out. She was gonna let you know. She didn't care if you was her husband, her boss,
Yep.
her children, her grandchildren. She she was gonna get you together and then be like, "It's some
Yep.
cake in there." Where you sitting up there with your face balled up so far? Ain't nobody stirred.
Oh my
You
God.
mad?
Yes.
What you mad for? That's how she was. She she taught me how to season food for real. Like, it's because of her that I cook like I cook. Mom taught me how to cook, and then Mama taught me how to season. I remember being constantly amazed that like her food was just always perfect. Like, it might have not been what I wanted to eat, but it was perfect. I remember being a little girl and she was gonna, honestly, she also didn't believe in making you eat food you didn't want to eat. So she was gonna give you every bit of stank about most things, but whatever she was gonna ask you what you wanted to eat, and then she was gonna make that, even if it was not what was there that was made already. She wasn't like that. And her philosophy was, she said,
She
I don't
sure
want to
did.
eat food I ain't in the mood to eat, so what, I'm going to make you eat food you don't want to eat for? And I remember her, when I was real little, I remember her having a chicken coop. And one day I said I wanted a fried egg sandwich for lunch. And she put on her shoes and went outside and got an egg or two and came in and made me my fried egg sandwich. And I didn't realize growing up that not everybody grew up like that. Like, it took some time for me to realize like how singular our childhood was with these people. Man, oh my gosh, one of my childhood dreams, I wanted to be able to cook like her, and I wanted to be able to speak people out like her. That was a personal goal because she was so creative with how she would put it together, like, oh, and it would just come out effortlessly, just wildness. I'd be like, okay. And I'm gonna just tell it. I remember one time I was probably in high school, and Dad and I were at her house, and he was just harassing her, like
Yes.
just picking at her and picking at her. Mind you, he gets the spirit from her because she likes to pick also. And he was getting her goat, and she finally said, she
I
just
was gonna
casually
bring.
said while she's cooking, Ronnie, I'll cut your shit sack
I
loose.
was.
Just, ma'am, what? I remember there was somebody who was one of our uncle's girlfriends kept calling the house and was calling and calling and calling, and she answered the phone and she said, "Look him, Foxworth women, we don't be running up behind no man. If he tell you that's where he going, and that's where he at, and if he goes somewhere else, then he there."
Oh
And she said,
shit!
"And if you call my house one more
I
time,
missed
I'm
that.
gonna put my fist down your throat and pull your goozle out."
Yo, Goozle. I
Yeah,
ain't never heard that one
yeah,
before.
the goozle, the goozle, the goozle. Alteen,
Oh man.
she listen. Alteen was ready to go at all times, and there was always a jelly layer cake on her table, and we weren't allowed to eat
Yep.
sweets like that, like past our, we could have our little Debbie snack cake in the afternoon, but like Mama didn't have sweets like that at her house. But man, you, as long as you did not break her beautiful glass cake dish, which was terrifying, but the cake was worth it, um you could cut you as big a piece of jelly layer cake as you wanted to when you got off from school
Yes, indeed.
and sit down with a glass of
God, I
milk.
miss that layer
You
cake.
talk
I
about
remember
living?
Lolita made a
Yeah.
jelly layer cake, and it
Hmm.
tasted just like Mama's. I was like, man, this all right here.
Look, when I saw that she started her business and
Yeah.
I saw up there jelly layer cake, I said, Lord
Yes.
have mercy, I ain't seen a jelly layer cake since
And
Altean.
piggybacking on
That
what you
touched
said
my
about her
soul
having a
right
way with
there. I was
words,
like, whoop.
I remember when she got you probably were there when it happened, when she got a run in her stockings, and I think Papa suggested that she sew the stockings back up to mend the rip, and she said, "Man, Edward, I gotta run in my stockings from asshole to appetite." I said, I'm sitting there looking around like, the hell did she just say? Asshole to appetite, bruh. How did she come up with stuff like this?
Oh my gosh.
Man, and yeah.
Don't even know. I
Boy,
mean, oh my
putting it
goodness.
mildly.
Yeah,
And
she had
speaking
a
of
facility
cooking,
with the
I
language.
remember she was the first. That was the first time I ever had fried okra and rice. It was the way she prepared it, and oh man, those were routinely the highlights of my summer. Getting that okra and rice. They get it out the garden. They'd sort out the bad ones, and then man would cut it up. Throw it in the cooking oil, and then had that side of butt meat to go with it with that rice. Ooh, wait! You can't have okra and rice without butt meat. That's man. And then it was that, and then the way she, just like how you said, how she just seasoned her food to perfection. The way that she fried them chicken wings. My God, the chicken wings, and then they would get the potatoes and cut them up into French fries, and then just drop them in the grease. That was prime summertime eating right there, and it left such an impression on me. And I know I probably told this story to you before, but it inspired me to try my hand at cooking French fries. So one day, I might have been 8 or 9 years. I might have been 8 or 9 years old, and I waited until Mom and Dad left. I don't know where they went. And I got my pot. I cut the potatoes up just like Mama did, but unbeknownst to me, she was cooking them in cooking oil. I thought she was cooking them in water. So I had the pot full of water with the potatoes cut, and I dropped it in the pot. And when I went to go scoop it up, and it had just sieved through the ladle, and I'm like, what did I do wrong? And then I asked her, I'm like, I cooked it just like you did. I set the pot, I cut the fries, I poured water in it, let it boil, and then I dropped it in. As soon as I said water, she busted out laughing. She said, no, boy, I don't cook. She said, I don't cook no French fries with no water, boy. You gotta put cooking oil in that thing. And then she saw the look on just the perplexed look on my face, like I was so mad at myself that I used the wrong ingredient. And she saw my face, she just busted out laughing again. She did not spare fools, but hey, she learned me real quick though. She learned me real quick with the chick.
Did she ever tell you about fishing for? She ever tell you about fishing for chickens?
Yes, it was cool.
Yeah.
Please do.
Okay, so I will explain for the listeners. She said her and her siblings would be on the back porch of their mother's house. And when they would throw the feed out, which would be corn, for the chicken, and all the chickens would run up on the yard, they would have tied a string around some of the pieces of corn. And so they would wait on the porch until a chicken swallowed that particular piece of corn, and they'd snatch it up on the porch. And she said sometimes they didn't swallow it enough, and so the chicken would drop back down before we could get it on the porch. But it was the height of the game to be able to get the chicken all the way up on the porch.
They had a chicken coop in the backyard, and if they wanted chicken, all they had to do, they didn't have to go to the grocery store. All they had to do was just go to the coop and snatch up a chicken or get an egg. I mean, they truly lived off the land, and that's something that I always enjoyed. But
yeah,
man, I miss that lady, and she used to always look out for me whenever I was working at the summer feeding program, because First Baptist Church, she worked in the kitchen in there, and First Baptist Church was right across the street from the summer feeding program. So whenever I would clock out, I had already had lunch, but she would always look out for me, and she was like, Danny, I got some food for you here.
Okay.
And she would always have the styrofoam container, and there would be chicken wings, and there would be mac and cheese, and mashed potatoes and gravy. And every week, she would ask me, "You drink sweet tea in it?" I do. I would. She was like, I got a gallon. Literally every week, it would be a fresh gallon of sweet tea for me. Every week.
Yes.
Man, she was such a generous lady.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I remember that sweet tea. She would just be bringing it home.
Yep.
Oh my gosh.
And I used to like
She was.
riding in her car too. She had that
She
Chevy
absolutely
Malibu.
was.
Oh man, that thing was beautiful.
Man, it was. It absolutely was. And I just remember sitting in the back, just
Cracker
eating.
Jacks?
What are those little popcorn that has the fries? Cracker Jacks.
Wow. And
Yeah, I
much like
remember
riding
eating
with,
Cracker Jacks
Peppa
sitting in
the
the back of
C10
that
pickup,
car.
I too would be drenched.
Yep.
Because she just did not believe in down in the windows in the summertime. They were so reliant on them little side mirrors, thinking that was adequate ventilation, and it wasn't. But oh well. I powered through it. Yep, I powered through it just because I enjoyed being in the presence of my man.
We here now.
And unfortunately, she succumbed to dementia that she had been fighting for quite a while. I think upwards of 10 years. So, yeah, what were your initial reactions when you first got the news that she had dementia?
It was my first encounter with the disease, and so I was in disbelief for a while, for like at least a year. I was just kind of like, what now? I just, but there were, things started kind of happening. She was leaving things, she was forgetting things, behavioral changes and stuff like that. But it still, I don't think it was until maybe those last few years that like the major shift happened where I was like, she's really, 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 really sick, because up until then, for so long, she's so fiercely independent. So for so long, she was still cooking, she was still, doing the whatever. Like she was still like, it was like, yes, she has dementia, and she's about to bring the fried chicken also. Because it was that for a long time, and until it really was not.
Inkling that I knew something was wrong was I came home from work one day and I stopped by to visit her. And I asked her how she was doing. She was like, I'm good. I'm just sitting here waiting for mom to get home. And I'm like, what? I was like, well, this ain't good at all. And then I thought that was just, it was just a one-time thing. And then a couple weeks later, I came home and she said the same thing again. I'm like, all right, something ain't right. And then I think it was Dad that broke the news to me, and I was just like, oh no. And then just being so close to her and seeing how and witnessing it firsthand, just that it was just a slow like cognitive decline. And I remember I would watch her some days whenever mom and dad had to go do something, and I would cook some grits and sausage for her, and then she would eat it. And she was like, that's good. That was really good, Danny. And then 20 minutes later, she was like, I'm hungry. Like, I need something to eat. I'm like, man, you just ate. You ate like 20 minutes ago. She said, I did? I was like, yes, ma'am, you did. She was like, oh, well, shit. And I was like, oh, man. And, it was just, it was hard. It was hard to see, being that it was like she was a shell of her former self. I mean, she was still fiercely independent, still very, very self-reliant, but it was to the point where her brain had basically betrayed her body. And it was just, it was heartbreaking to see, because I knew it wasn't her herself. It was just her brain causing that. But, yeah, I remember when it was just, when it got to the
Yeah.
grim part, when I would be over there, and then sometime, and she wouldn't eat, and then at times she would just completely forgot to breathe. I was like, oh boy, this is hard to sit through. And I remember Dad and Uncle Gilbert
Yeah.
staying with her whenever she was under that at home hospice care. And then I just remember getting that call from Dad at like 6 o'clock the next morning saying that she had passed. And just going there and
Mm-hmm.
just seeing her lifeless in that hospice bed like that, I was like, man, you know, I hate that it happened, but I'm thankful that she no longer has to suffer like this. So what was your reaction whenever you got the news?
Well, the years, those last years leading up to it, had been such a huge grieving process along and along and along, because
Yeah.
it's like you're constantly mourning parts of this person as they're slipping away. And then the next day, that part might be, they might have a better day, and then you're dealing with it. Like, it's a wild roller coaster of grief, um dealing with dementia. And when I got the news, I didn't know what to do. I Like, my whole self went completely numb. And I remember I went to work that day because I didn't know what to do. I went, and I went to work, and people were like, "Do you need to go
Yeah.
home?" And I was like, because I was living in Savannah then, um, and which it was fortunate that I was able to get home easily. But yeah, I remember the numbness. Like, it was just yeah,
Yeah.
that it, because she was such a force, like, just a force. And it rocked everything. like like everything changed, like, because her house was the center of our family in a particular type of way. And so then with Pat back gone,
Yeah.
and then with her gone, it was just, there was just a void, just this huge void. Like, it was, everything was like completely tilted off its axis. It was,
Yeah. I'm thankful for
yeah.
her, and I'm is I'm still always going to uplift the memory of Altean Foxworth. She was such a fierce, such a fierce lady.
Always.
She told her how she called the house. She saw it, and she told it like it is. I respect the hell out of that, and I love her for that, because it was like her and Pepe were such a yin and yang.
Always.
Being that she was like the outgoing, aggressive one, and he was the one that he would just chill on the couch and watch Price is Right,
Yeah.
and not bother people. But it's wild how seeing that dynamic work. See, it was just wild seeing that dynamic work the way that it did. So now, yeah. So now we're gonna go over to
Yeah.
mom's side of the family, and
Very,
we're gonna
very
talk
much so.
about the patriarch on that side of the family, one Lewis Sinclair Dees, aka Granddaddy. So let's talk about our favorite memories.
Man,
Yeah,
his laugh.
sure did.
He had this wheezing laugh when he got really, really tickled, that just, everybody, you had to laugh with him. But cause like, he was so like chill. His affect, if he was not in church, his affect was very just, he sat in his chair with his hand like that most of the time. And if it, church or a baseball game would make him hype. Anything else, he would
Yep.
just kind of, just a little pensive, just taking in the sights or whatever. But one of my earliest memories of him, though, was he was he was the first black Coca-Cola truck driver in our area. And so when I would be out with mom somewhere, moving around when I was little, if we ran across him out on his route, he would
Really?
he would open up the truck and let me pick one soda, whatever flavor I wanted. Yeah, I
Wow.
felt like
I
a
didn't know he was
princess.
still
Boy, you
delivering
couldn't
Coke,
tell me nothing.
delivering
I'd be like,
Coca-Cola
run
trucks
me
when you
that
were alive.
Fanta. But yeah, that's what, because it was, and they were
Man.
they were in glass bottles too. I remember, like, it was, Yep. He
Yeah,
was
that's
still
longer than I thought.
he drove the Coca-Cola truck for a long time. And then I think
Yeah.
after that he started working for the school system, like as a janitor, because he didn't want to sit down nowhere. He retired and got another job, and then he retired from that one
Yep.
and started running the daycare with Granny, a little home daycare. But I remember him having just a beautiful singing voice and a clap like thunder. Like the Baptist church that he was a founding member of, New Ashley Baptist Church, was the original church was little, and the pews were wooden, and the floor was wooden. And when
Yep.
they would get to going, they didn't need no musicians. They would get that clap going with a foot stomp that was syncopated with oh, buddy. I'm talking about,
Yes.
you talk about
And
some carrying on in the church
it always
down to
blew
the
my
church
mind
house.
the noise that
Yeah,
his claps would make,
that
considering
was
that like
granddaddy.
his two middle fingers were basically stumps because of an accident. And the fact that, so basically he only had like 8.5 digits, and
Right.
and whenever he would clap to
Mm-hmm.
the music, like his clap sounded like thunder. I was like, bro, how does this is it just defies logic.
It did.
Yeah, he really was. I remember my first memories of
He was that kind of
Granddaddy.
dude.
He was he was actually the first person that really got me into sports, specifically baseball, because I vividly remember whenever we would go spend the weekend at their house, every weekend or every night, we'd be in front of that big box Magnavox at 7:05 watching Atlanta Braves baseball. And just seeing how him and Granny were so invested in the game, I was like, man, this is cool. Like, because I mean, we didn't really watch sports in the house like that, so this is a whole new world to me. And then I'll tell you another thing too. He was also the reason why I became
Right.
why I have such an affinity for ball caps, because I never saw him without a ball cap, like ever. And you walk in that room past like the dining room area, he always had the hat rack, and it was just full
That's
of
true.
hats. And I was like, man, I'm gonna get hat. Whenever I grow up, I'm gonna have me a hat rack, and I'm gonna have a whole bunch of hats just like my granddaddy. Yep, yeah. And he actually
They
gave
were
me my
trucker
first
hats
job,
specifically.
the aforementioned summer feeding program. I
Mm-hmm.
got that because of him, because he
Really?
because he worked at the school district office, and the school district ran the summer
Wow.
feeding program. So he was God. I can't remember the lady who he connected me
Uh-huh.
with, but then he was like, would you like a job for the summer? I was like, yes, sir, absolutely. And so he comes back and he gives me the application. He was like, just mention this lady's name. I think she was the director of. She was like the director of the program or something like that. But that was her title in the summer. But I believe she worked at she worked at a kitchen in one of the school cafeterias during the year. And so I got in contact with her, and then I gave her my application, and then she hired me on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, that's still the most fun job I've ever had. Yeah. And I'll tell you another thing
That's all
I'll
right.
tell you another thing that I had an affinity for because of him
That's
was
awesome.
AM radio. Because when he had that little Nissan pickup, whenever he would pick me up from school, and I would ride with him to New Ashley to help him clean up the church, he
Uh-huh.
always had that radio on AM 950. You remember WMCJ, the gospel station amongst corner? He always had his truck radio on AM 950.
Yes, I
If it
do.
wasn't 950.
Yes, I
It
do.
was AM 980 WQIZ in St. George. Because once we got out amongst corner, it would lose signal, so he would just move slightly up the dial to pick up WQIZ. And it was just something about the crackle of AM radio that just fascinated me, and I got that
Man.
from him too. I'll tell you another thing, sports related. Sometimes whenever I would spend
Yeah.
a weekend with him, I think you were think you had gotten older and you would either stay home or spend the weekend at a friend's house. But I would still spend the weekend over at their house sometimes. Some Sundays, like if it was during, I'll say like during the holiday break, what we would do on Sundays is I would go to New Ashley with them, and then after New Ashley was over, we would change clothes right after church, and we would get in the car, and we would drive to Atlanta, and we would catch an Atlanta Hawks game, like the basketball team, and then we would come back that same night. Yeah, and I mean, Atlanta from here is like a 4-hour drive, so we would literally get there.
Holy smokes!
Like, about an hour, well, that'd be about a couple of hours before tip-off, and then whenever the game was over, we head back down I-20 to I-26, and we get home probably right at around midnight. And we did that several times. Yeah. I vividly remember that.
That's crazy.
I used to look forward to spending.
Man, I did not know that.
And so,
I see. Now I remember one time when we were both headed over there, and you and I were arguing about something. We were just bickering. And Granddaddy said, if I had a sibling, I would never argue with them. And I was like, no, I'm raised to respect my elders. And I didn't say nothing. But I thought to myself, spoken like somebody who's an only child. Sir, I promise you do not know what you're talking about. I told Mom that the other day, and she said, Daddy used to say that same thing to us. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, it was a ploy. Yeah. That was just a parenting hack. He had. He just guilt you into getting along with your siblings.
You like nobody's business.
I remember.
God, that eye roll said it all.
I guess. I definitely didn't. I didn't want it. Hey, you're not gonna go against Granddaddy. What you gonna do? You not. Nobody's bucking against Granddaddy. No, just inside my head.
Man, so many great memories. Do you remember him ever cooking? Because I don't really remember Granddaddy ever cooking anything.
I don't remember him cooking, but I remember Mommy telling me that he could make pancakes and flip them in the air out of the pan.
I was never good at that. I tried that.
Yep. She said I ain't never tried that. My pancakes are excellent, but the flip in the air, nah, that's not me. That's not my skill set. I don't. If anybody out there in the internet knows how, we're open for tips and tricks or whatever. But I don't really remember him cooking anything. But Mom also said he was the person. You know how when we were little, Mom was the one that got us up for school, and that kind of thing. I thought that's what everybody's mom did, but Granddaddy was who got them up from school and washed them up and got their clothes together and the lunches packed and stuff like that. Like, completely blew my mind. Yeah, yep. I said, where was Granny? Mom said, in the bed.
Wow. I never knew that. Man, I'm learning
She was like, she didn't participate in that part. I was like, okay, valid.
Yeah.
Me too, because I never knew y'all was just taking road trips.
He ended up passing away at the age of, he was 91 when he passed away? He was in his 90s for sure. So how did his death affect you?
I think so. He was. Granddaddy was he was the rock of the family. He was just this steadfast presence. You could count on him for whatever. You could come to him with whatever. And he was not a person that was going to hoop and holler and yell. He was not that guy. He was just always this well of calm. In a family, we got some wild folks in our family. We not necessarily the calm bunch.
That's true.
But Granddaddy was always just kind of, and ready to lend a kind word or a listening ear or whatever. But he was it was like losing cool water when it's hot.
Boy, that's such
outside
a
all the time. Like
losing cool water when it's hot outside. Man, that's awesome. And I remember just seeing him. Basically, he had dementia as well. But I think his his dementia was a little more aggressive than Maman's was,
Mm-hmm.
because his tenure with dementia, his bout with it was a lot,
It was.
like significantly shorter than Maman's was. And I remember the day of the funeral, after we put his
Yeah.
casket in the hearse, and I remember just hugging mom, and mom just breaking down, and that made me break down. And I was like, man, like you said, the rock of the family, he's gone. But after we buried him, and we went back to the house, and everybody was just having so many great anecdotes and stories to tell about him, and it was just so awesome. Everybody's account of their of being around granddaddy and not being privy to some of the things that everybody else was privy to. And that was it was a treat, being in the company of family and hearing all these fresh stories and all these exclusives.
Man.
That was good. That did me good for sure.
Yeah.
And so now I get to the matriarch. Go ahead.
His homegoing. Oh, I was just gonna say, his homegoing was the most joyful, and like complete expression of somebody that I've ever seen. I remember walking in there and like the way the choir was singing, like it was, because he was a psalmist. Granddaddy sang. Like he sang, he was that dude in the deacon corner holding it down. He sang. And and if he felt like you wasn't doing the song right, he'd take your song and sing and finish singing it for you. He was that guy. And that it was that full of song, and just that it was such a reflection of his life and all of his years of service in the church and his service in the community. And it was that was a homegoing for real.
Spirit lives forever and ever and ever and ever. So now we're going to get to the matriarch of the D
Louis
family.
Dees.
The one, the only.
Yes.
Kelvenia Lillian Richardson Dees, aka Granny. So what were your biggest memories?
Yes.
I got to feel
AKA Granny. Okay, so I remember. So what a lot of folks don't know about Kelvenia is that she was quite a dancer, back in the day. And before she met Granddaddy, she would be out there jitterbugging her face off. She said, "I didn't let them throw me now. I didn't like that. You're not going to flip me over your head, but yeah, I like to dance." And that is a thing I definitely inherited from her, because I love to dance. I got that part from her.
Really?
She loved butterflies, and I got that from her too. And butterflies, peacock feathers. When she found out I was making peacock feather earrings, she said, "Look here,
wow,
you make me some of them, and if I'm gone before you get finished, you put them on me anyway." Yeah. So when we had her tea, when she turned 95, we did a tea for
That's
her.
All right.
And I made sure that I had her some peacock feather earrings for her to put on. She loved costume jewelry. Like, she loved shiny, blingy, bright things. She played a cowbell. I remember Granny. I'm circling back to the dance thing because this is where I meant to go with it. I remember I was watching Bugs Bunny do the Charleston, and I was trying to figure out how to do it, and Granny was like, "It's like this," and she lifted up the tail end of her dress, and she started showing me how to do the Charleston in the kitchen. Yep.
Oh my
she
God,
did.
that red rice was so good.
She was known for her red rice. And I'm talking about, she would make mountains of it the way you see our African brothers and sisters making jollof, and it just be mounds of it. That's how Kelvenia made that red rice with that sausage in it. Lord have mercy.
Boy, that's putting it lightly.
My goodness, that red rice was something, wasn't it? And she always with the hats, always with the hats. Like she had a hat for every occasion. I remember her letting us. What she would get all of us, all of the first cousins, all of her grandkids. She would get us all at Christmas time, and I guess give the parents a break, let them
Yes.
hang out, whatever, and then we would. And I remember building that fort. Cause I was talking about the fort, and she was like, "Well, how you make it?" And so I started explaining, and she was like, "Well, what you need? You need some sheets, okay, and then some blankets, all right." And we built that fort in that this dining room, y'all. I'm talking about beautiful china, silver tea set,
Yes, you
like
did.
crystal chandelier, and we built a fort in that joker, okay, a fort. You talking about a funky good time? And Gray let us build that fort. And she could be harsh in her in her
Yep.
she too was a force. Like it was the yin yang, like you spoke about with Mama and Pepe. She was the outgoing one. She was the mouth. She was gonna get you together. If you really was acting a fool, she would tell you she was gonna pray God on you. All right, now I'm gonna pray God on you. It made everybody stop. Whoa, 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 Granny. Now, please please don't pray God on. And I remember her saying one time, she said, "Maybe I don't know how to pray." She said, "Cause I don't believe in praying, asking God for all kind of things." She said, "I ask God for health and strength, and I figure I can get the rest
All right,
myself."
you messed my head up just now. Say that again.
She said she didn't believe in asking God for all kind of stuff.
Wow.
She said, "I ask for health
Man,
and strength, and I figure I can get the rest myself."
You just blew my mind just now.
And
it's funny because so many of you. Go ahead.
and
I was going to
she
say
owned.
so many of my earliest memories of her are
Oh no, you go ahead.
identical to yours. And I just remember she was known as the Avon lady, and she always had her products on the in the dining room table. And I remember whenever we'd go home from spending the weekend with her.
Oh my God, yes.
She would give me like cans of deodorant, bottles of Skin So Soft, like all kinds of soaps and shampoos. And yeah. And
Boy,
like
that
said,
Skin So Soft.
the aforementioned red rice. I used to always look forward to the Christmas Eve get-togethers just so I could get that red rice and that fried fish. Everything was right with the world. And then her and Papa had
everything was right with the world.
Her and Granddaddy ran the little mini
Yeah.
daycare, like for years after retirement. And it was so cool, seeing them retire and then still managing to pivot and make more money after retirement like that. I was like, boy, I tell you, they get to it one way or another. I had the utmost respect for that. Handling kids ain't easy, especially.
Granny was always
man,
and she had a house full. It was plenty of them. And I'm talking about she was getting them potty trained, teaching them manners. It's snack time. Let's go on over here. What's your ABC? Let's go.
Harris Teeter the other day that was babysat by Granny. And
she was always
like, I remember you. He was like, man, your granny. She was like, your granny used to babysit me when I was a kid.
Wow.
I was like, what? Yeah, like he's all grown with kids and stuff. I was like, wow, boy, time flies.
Wow.
And of course, taking it back to the Christmas Eve get together. I wish we still had that home video when Margaret was complaining about her not getting her toys, and in the timely fashion. And, yep. And then,
boy. Santa Claus ain't gonna come till everybody look like shit get shut.
You keep harassing me, I'll tell him to carry them damn toys back. And Margaret just burst into tears. Boy, she dropped the hammer on Margaret, boy. Man, yeah. And she lived a full and boisterous life.
Yeah.
And she left us at the age of 98. So what was your
She
takeaway
did.
from those final days of her being on Earth?
I was glad that I was able to go with mom and sit with her when I was at home for Christmas. And it was one of those, like, she was not sick, but it was one of those things that it's the stuff that everybody talks about when people are getting ready to transition. She handed my mama a whole bag of snacks one time, or our mom, and was like, "Hey, I don't need these."
Mm-hmm.
Or she would be talking to granddaddy, you know. Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff was happening. So like we knew, you know. And it was
Yeah.
weird to be in a world without her in it. Is what it felt like. Like, there's a scene on, this is gonna sound weird, but just go with me. The scene on Superman 2 when General Zod and them are in the Phantom Zone, and you just see it spinning out into the universe like that. It was like each one of our grandparents had a point on that. They were holding down their corner, and she was the last one holding down the corner. And when she transitioned, it was like I felt like we spun out, you know. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, also a force. Also never ever to be played with. She would get you all the way
Yeah.
together at any time, and she the only person who could check her was granddaddy, and all he would say when she went all the way
Yep.
off the rails was "Cap,"
That's true.
and she.
That's true. Man, I
But
remember
yeah, nobody else.
I remember when
Yeah.
I got a call from mom when I was at work, and she told me that, Granny was they had to take Granny to the emergency room. She was like, she was like, it's not looking good at all. It said, she's got congestive heart failure and her heart's only operating at like 20%. And I mean, I just stopped everything and I went straight to Somerville Medical and just stayed there the afternoon.
I remember that.
And I mean, she was heavily sedated, and I just remember that, like, the days after that, how much weight she had lost, and like I guess the meds they were giving her, it was because she had retained a lot of fluid, and just seeing how she looked whenever, like, once that they got that extra fluid out of her. I was just like, man, she just looked like a completely different person. And after she got off the sedatives, well, after they weaned the sedatives off her,
Yeah.
and they put her in the senior care center, and every Saturday I would go visit her for the whole day. And I just remember we would sit and watch Family Feud, because that's what whenever she was getting the home care, I would go over there on Saturdays, and then I would go over there on Wednesday nights, and I'd go over there on Wednesday nights, and we would just sit and watch Family Feud together. And I just remember, I'm like, all right, so what kind of suit is Steve Harvey going to wear when he walks out? And I remember one time he had it was like a bright yellow suit, and as soon as they called the name, here's your host, Steve Harvey. And he walked out with that bright yellow suit, and I just remember Granny said, dude, Jesus, he'll just wear any kind of, he said, they just let him wear any kind of suit, ain't it? Man, that was, oh my God, that was so much fun. Just sitting there cracking up, just listening to her comment on his suits. And I remember that her health had just gotten progressively worse. And it was to the point where she would throw fits, like, with the caretaker. And I remember one Saturday I was staying with her, and they were trying to get her out. Me and the caretaker, come to find out, I went to Trident Tech with them. Shout out to my homie Zorba. We tried to get her out of the bed to put her in the chair, and boy, she was mean as a rat. Like, she tried biting my hand like several times. She's like, turn me loose. She said, I want to sit on a shitting wheelchair. Turn me loose.
Golly.
She tried to bite me, and she tried to bite the caretaker. I was like, boy, I tell you, she was a fierce lady up until the very end.
Oh my gosh.
And then I remember the last day I spoke to her, she was unresponsive, and I just told her I loved her, and I gave her a kiss on the forehead, and I said, "Go get your rest." And I went in the car, and I probably cried for like 20 minutes straight, just knowing that that's the last grandparent, and she's no longer going to be here in the physical form. And that was a hard pill for me to swallow. That was probably the last really good cry I had. And I was like, man, but you know what? It felt good to get that out of me. It really did. And yeah, the funeral was beautiful.
Yeah.
Just hearing everybody telling their stories of her, and you know,
it was.
You know, she said the story included, you know, her snapping at somebody, and it was just so funny, like seeing that. Okay, so it wasn't just us that she would you know yell at. I was like, man, that's Kelvenia D's right there. Yes, 100%. Oh man,
No,
Kelvenia
anybody can get
D's, your spirit lives on forever. 98 years. Take a bow. So, Melissa, do you have any final remarks? I enjoyed this
Forever.
episode. I really did.
Enjoyed this episode too. You know, this is my bread and butter. I love remembrances and digging through family history and stuff like that. So this is my jam. Yeah. Oh man, hug your grandparents. Ask them about their childhood. Get to know ask them about what their life was like when they were your age. Like there's if you have grandparents that are living that you have a relationship with, like, it's so worth it to just stop on by and see about them or call them, you know? Yeah, I wouldn't trade nothing for none of these people we talked about.
Being in the presence of, you know, your elders like that, it's such an enriching experience, and is a very valuable experience as well. And again, I could not have said it better. Sit down with your parents, talk with your grandparents, talk with them. You know, when Man was going through her dementia, it was so wild because, you know, her short-term memory was pretty much non-existent, but she could tell me about her childhood in vivid detail, and that was so mind-blowing to me. And just the fact that I learned so many things that I wasn't privy to, and just having that valuable time, you know, chopping it up with my grandparents like that. So again, we cannot stress this enough. If your grandparents are still on this earth, you know, sit down, have conversations with them, ask them questions about their life and, you know, their experiences, because you're going to get some valuable information, because experience is the best teacher, straight up. And so thank y'all for listening, and make sure you like, download, or subscribe. Since we last spoke with Danny Foxworth, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find me on my YouTube channel at Danny Foxworth 843. There you can find all the videos for this podcast, as well as my baseball podcast, At the Plate with Danny Foxworth, and my new podcast, Growing Up Low Country with Liz and Danny. We just dropped our second episode this past week. And also, my new upcoming episode is strictly about candles, called A Wicked Good Time with Danny Foxworth. Y'all be on the lookout for that podcast, because it'll be dropping on your eyes and ears very soon. And for my sister and myself, this has been another episode of Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. And until next time, y'all be good. Peace.